In this presentation by Gary, Kate, Ash and Jade, we will be looking at the common social behaviour of social loafing and what might be the antecedent for this behaviour and how you can overcome this problem. In this presentation, we'll be exploring what social loafing is through the personas of Marty and Ted. We'll be looking at what are the drivers, incentives and motivating factors of the behaviour, what aspects of the behaviour is individual or collective, what do social loafers gain from this behaviour, look at social identity, group culture and norms, self-regulating and self-sanctioning behaviour, what strategies are useful to overcome it, our summary and our references. Today we're going to look at the impact the presence of others can have on us when working in a group. An individual can be impacted in a variety of ways depending on the setting. Two really common factors to impact individuals and a group is social facilitation and social loafing. Let's look at a work-related example of this. A manager at a PR firm has a big group project with an important task with many moving bits. He has assigned 9 people to the group who all work in different departments. The manager won't be overseeing the task and expects the group to get the job done. One of the people in this group is Ted. Ted gets impacted by social facilitation. That is, when Ted is in the presence of others, his performance alters. Depending on whether the task is simple or complex, depends on whether Ted does better or not. The manager has asked Ted in front of everyone to do a simple task of assigning people to different responsibilities. Ted has done this before and feels very confident. While doing the task, Ted breezes through it and finishes a lot quicker than other people would have. He performs better. Later on, Ted's manager asks him to do a more complex task, breaking down the budget to a panel of stakeholders. Ted gets nervous. He starts feeling physical uneasy and his mind starts racing. He gets really worried about the impact this might have on the group and he feels pressure from them. He performs really poorly. Both of these are examples of social facilitation. The term social facilitation was first coined by Norm Tippett in 1898 when he noticed that cyclists often perform better when in a group than cycling against themselves just against the time. People often go into a physical arousal state and their performance is altered in front of a group. Now let's take Marty. He belongs to the same group as Ted and has really similar tasks. While Ted felt energized and the presence of the group propelled him further, Marty is the opposite. Having a hard-working group setting for Marty makes him feel like he can sit back and maybe not do as much work. This is called social loafing. This social pattern was first documented by Max Ringelmann in 1913 when he noticed that when he asked an individual to pull a rope, they went to a lot more effort than when they were in a collective group. We've all probably experienced or been a Marty in a group. As the manager assigns a task, Marty feels as though others will take responsibility and he won't have to do as much work. He isn't being individually recognised for his efforts. It's also possible that the sucker effect is playing out. That is, Marty doesn't want to put in more effort than others for the same task, but yet receives the same award, therefore being known as a sucker. This can happen during a group assignment for school or when you're asked to clean up the dishes at the end of a family meal or when in meetings at work. The result of which is the group is less effective, they have performance problems, and the group doesn't reach the full potential, all stated in the 1992 study by J.M. George.
Individual motivation plays an important role in determining if social loafing will occur within a group. The levels of motivation an individual feels towards a task will determine how likely it is that they will engage in social loafing. An individual with low motivation towards a task is more likely to engage in social loafing than someone with high levels of motivation. There are a number of factors which influence the level of motivation an individual feels when working in a group. These include the size of the group and perceptions of responsibility, accountability, value, dispensability, fairness, and the effort of others. Research tells us that as the size of a group increases, individuals experience a diffusion of personal accountability due to the decreased pressure on any one person, resulting in lower individual effort and increased social loafing behaviours. This diffusion of responsibility occurs when individuals believe their efforts have little impact on the outcome, reducing motivation towards the overall goals. Group dynamics can also have a significant impact on motivation, and how people perceive their level of responsibility and accountability when completing group work. When joining a group, we naturally compare ourselves to the other members of the group. As previously mentioned, the sucker effect results in individuals losing motivation and exerting less effort when they believe they have to compensate for other group members' lack of contribution to the team. Another way we compare is if we see ourselves as being dispensable in the group. Price et al. Found that individuals compare their own skills and abilities with other team members. If they compare themselves favourably, they will consider their own contributions to be important, potentially even indispensable. However, if the group compares themselves unfavourably with other members of the group, they will consider their contributions to be of little value and subsequently lose motivation towards a task. All of these variables result in challenges with maintaining individual and group motivation to avoid social loafing for the duration of group work. There are a number of individual incentives that can assist with improving motivation and overcoming social loafing within a team setting. The collective effort model explains that individual effort during a collective task is influenced by the extent to which individuals believe their efforts will lead to outcomes that they personally value and the extent to which their efforts will be recognised by others. Research has shown when groups are assessed as a collective, individuals are more likely to engage in social loafing due to a belief that the relationship between individual effort and sanction or reward is weak. One way to improve the recognition of effort is to increase the visibility of individual effort within the group. Creating visibility through accountability for individual tasks, increased supervision, and peer feedback mechanisms will create external motivators and drivers. Creating visibility of individual effort reinforces the potential for reward and recognition, addressing the diffusion of responsibility that can be felt in groups. There are also intrinsic motivators that can improve commitment to group outcomes. Identifying and recognising the unique value individuals bring to a team can improve individual connection to overall goals, improving the sense of value people feel regarding their contribution to the group outcomes. Helping individuals find a sense of meaning and value regarding their contribution will improve their level of connection and ownership to the group outcomes. Individual satisfaction within the workplace comes from feeling valued, competent, stimulated, challenged, with a sense of social connectedness and with sufficient recognition from supervisors. As we've explored, there are a number of factors within group work that can both positively and negatively impact on our sense of satisfaction. All of these factors contribute to our overall level of job satisfaction, which plays an important role in our level of motivation and commitment. Individual satisfaction within a team-based environment refers to the extent to which team members have positive feelings that encourage them to work within the same team again. We will now explore the group-based factors that impact on the effectiveness of group work.
Motivation, reward incentives, and job satisfaction also impact an individual's identity and effort within a team. As identified by Woods and West, the degree to which an individual identifies with a group can have a significant impact upon their output of effort to support and achieve shared goals. Haslam et al. State that those team members who have self-stereotyped and identify with the shared social identity, that is the shift from I to we, will demonstrate collectivist behaviours which emphasise goal attainment, group cooperation, group welfare, and group harmony. Early 1989 highlights that high levels of collectivism, as seen in those group members who adopt the group's shared social identity, demonstrate lower levels of social loafing than those members who maintain their individualist or I identity. Individualists focus on self-sufficiency and control in the pursuit of individual goals which may not be consistent with the in-group's collectivist goals. When group success is shared, rather than holding individuals accountable for their part, individualists' contributions can go unnoticed and they may socially loaf. Going back to Ted and Marty, as a social facilitator, you would expect Ted to uphold collectivist values. Marty, on the other hand, would display individuals' behaviours as the social loafer. As identified by Chang and Canfer, if management is selecting the team leader, it is important to ensure the leader is prototypical of and embodies the team's shared understanding of us, to uphold group norms and expectations, create strong followership, and create a cohesive collectivist culture to reduce the likelihood of social loafing behaviours. As Shaw and Feldman suggest, Group norms can play a large role in determining whether the group will be productive or not. If the work group feels the management is supportive, group norms will develop that facilitate, in fact enhance, group productivity. In contrast, if the work group feels that management or individual group members are antagonistic, group norms that inhibit and impair group performance are more likely to develop. Managers and group leaders can reduce counterproductive behaviours, such as social loafing, by making explicit statements about what is expected of the group to collectively achieve desired outcomes. These explicit statements increase the predictability of group members' behaviour and make it easier on group members to call out unacceptable behaviours, such as loafing, if they occur. George's 1992 extrinsic explanation of social loafing focuses on the fact that individual contributions to a group product are often unidentifiable, and this results in decreased motivation as the perceived relationship between individual effort and rewards is weak. Tied to this, perceptions of task visibility are likely to vary across workers, and it is those perceptions that influence social loafing. When task visibility is low, workers think that it is difficult for their supervisors to determine how hard they are working and how much effort they exerted on the job. Tied to this notion is Bandura's diffusion of responsibility, which states that accountability for work outputs is transferred to others. This simply means when everyone is responsible, no one feels responsible. Conversely, when perceived task visibility is high, workers believe that their supervisor is aware of levels of effort and thus are less likely to engage in social loafing. Although social loafing has many negative impacts for groups and organisations, Schipper's 2014 paper highlights the positives that result from loafing behaviour. Schipper's indicated that if there is a high degree of conscientiousness and agreeableness within the team members will work harder to compensate for the negative effects of loafing members and performance will be strong. For managers, this data highlights the importance of selecting individuals for teams high in conscientiousness and agreeableness, not only to reduce counterproductive behaviours such as loafing, but to also create a high-performing, efficient and cohesive team. Now that you have a clear understanding on the individual and group processes that affect social loafing, the next slides will highlight the typical perceptions of antecedents for social loafing.
In Section 2, numerous examples of social loafing behaviours and antecedents to these behaviours were identified. However, no single personality trait or set of circumstances would determine that social loafing will occur within groups. Social loafing as a behaviour has many and varied drivers and as such requires a variety of methods to address these drivers. Of course, identifying who might be typical of these behaviours is very difficult to ascertain and is usually not identified until the group work has begun. It is possible, however, that certain strategies could be put in place prior to group work commencing that may reduce the potential for social loafing to occur. We know that one aspect of enhancing social and group identity is through recognition of an ethical congruence between the individual and the group and the principles of the project that is being undertaken. We propose 3 strategies that will aid in the initial steps of identifying with the group and potentially minimising social loafing. Firstly, we propose self-regulation and self-sanctioning. Bandura attests that people are guided by their own set of ethics, and it's usually in the absence of accountability or the presence of greater anonymity that these self-regulatory ethics are compromised. We've all had situations where we've been impacted by social loafing or free riding. We, in fact, may have been the perpetrators. Often we don't know why this occurs in others, and through attribution bias, we make excuses why we ourselves perpetrate the behaviour. Having an understanding of what is perceived as social loafing is one way to potentially minimise the behaviour. This slide demonstrates an experiment conducted by Jaswala et al., asking students to identify their perceptions of social loafing. Sharing this information, probably not in this particular format, but we'll cover that when we get onto communicating, demonstrates clearly what would not be considered acceptable to a group or a team. Through past experiences and honest self-examination, we can look at these perceptions with a clear understanding of what is and is not acceptable, and how, with the use of a personal inventory of task commitment, might challenge individuals to examine their own strengths and weaknesses. Personal trait theory suggests little correlation with the ability to work with others. However, it is closely related to individual differences. These concepts of how one identifies themselves in relation to others can impact on a social connect or disconnectedness, thus impacting on potential social loafing. Secondly, develop a series of strategies that can be implemented prior to the commencement of the project, which specifically address potential drivers or underlying factors recognised as antecedents to social loafing. For instance, self-selection of teams. It has the potential for homogeneity within the group. This might make for a unified team, but might also strangle creativity and diversity of ideas. An external selection process may prove the better option for teams. Lack of accountability is another one. It's also linked with social loafing. Having clear outcomes and deadlines for team members and a method whereby KPIs are regularly evaluated should lessen the likelihood of social loafing. These are but two of many strategies that could be employed. However, it must be clear that implementing one or two of these strategies will not necessarily overcome the problem. By creating a suite of strategies, such as appropriate group size, extrinsic versus intrinsic rewards, personalised tasks, and creation of a collaborative team charter, are things that could all go towards reducing the likelihood of social loafing. We all communicate, but we don't always do it very well. Carew and Williams attest that communication among group members should enhance the cohesiveness of teams, while Cohen and Bailey state that team cohesion is associated with effectiveness of teams. Lamb has constructed the communication quality theoretical model as seen in this slide. It has 5 main principles. 1. Quality group discussions whereby time together is not wasted, objectives are met, and contributions are perceived by everyone as equitable. 2. Openness of communication. This requires sharing and honesty. Teamwork becomes a critical aspect of open discussions, and if this is lacking, training in this area should be investigated. 3. Accuracy of communication, which requires the shared information to be unambiguous and accessible so that each person is clear on what is required of them within the group. 4. Appropriateness of information can mean the way the information is shared, verbally, written, electronic, etc. It should be culturally sensitive and diverse to the extent where various learning differences are addressed. Ground rules regarding sharing of information may be worth considering. And 5. Richness, which relates to the depth of information and the quality of detail provided for the group members. If communication is an agent of change, then we must accept their responsibility to communicate to the extent that the sought-after change may occur. In other words, if we want to employ some of the previously discussed strategies to minimise social loafing, then it must be done in a way that everyone can understand.
Now that we have covered individual and group processes that result in social facilitation and loafing behaviours, in addition to discussing antecedents and strategies to overcome social loafing, it is time to revisit Ted and Marty. As a social facilitator, Ted is an individual who tends to work better with people around when he is completing an easy, well-learned task. Ted displays collectivist behaviours which include heightened cohesion and agreeableness. He identifies strongly with the collective social identity, and he upholds group ethics, norms, and expectations. As a manager, you may notice a number of Teds in your work teams. To ensure Ted stays on task and is able to achieve both difficult and easy taskings, it is important that you provide training opportunities to improve skills and knowledge, and to provide reward and recognition incentives to improve self-confidence and reinforce individual accountability. Marty, on the other hand, is what the evidence and research labels a social loafer. As a manager, you may have a Marty in your team, or you may have previously worked with a Marty. Social loafers usually perform more poorly on easy, well-learned tasks, are more likely to demonstrate individualist behaviours, have lower levels of team cohesion, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, do not collectively identify with the we, and do not uphold group norms and expectations. To address the Marty in your team, as a manager or team member, it is important that you emphasise that although the team outcome is a shared responsibility, Individual contributions are visible, and each member will be held accountable for their contributions. By also linking rewards and sanctions with individual contributions as part of the agreed norms and expectations, there are tangible rewards for displaying positive work behaviours. When combined, these factors reduce the likelihood that Marty will socially loaf. In summary, this executive brief has provided you with the knowledge to identify the individual and group processes that may result in an individual displaying social loafing behaviours. In addition, we have also provided you with the tools to address negative work behaviours, such as a personal inventory. We provided strategies to increase individual accountability, motivation, distributive justice and goal setting, and have further highlighted the importance of open communication to address the norms, expectations, and team engagement. Thank you for your time.